There are two words that I find to be very fascinating. They're very different words, but for some reason, we like to use them interchangeably. We like to use them the same. And the words are impact and influence. And we think that if we've made an impact, that we've influenced someone, but that's not always true. All we've really done is change the course of their experience that day. And one of the ways that I like to think about this is this park that we had by our house. There was a creek that ran through it, and at several intervals there were bridges that you could cross over the creek to get to the other side. And in some places where that bridge crossed over the creek, it was kind of wide and deep enough that we could get on top of there and throw rocks in with our friends, and we would look for the biggest rock to throw in there just so that we could create some sort of splash. And we were hoping that we could splash somebody that was on the side of the creek. But what we noticed in the wider spots of the creek, that when we threw that rock in, there would be ripples that would go across. And that process of the rock hitting the surface, creating a splash, and making the ripples go across was really the impact of the rock hitting the water. And it definitely made a mark there. But that wasn't the influence of the rock. That was only the impact, because the rock kept floating, kept going. If the river had no bottom to it, it would go on forever. And it would continue to make new impacts along the way. It would hit other places in the river that might send other ripples that we couldn't see because it was below the surface. But the rock keeps going. It goes on and on forever. So if you think of you and me being the rock and not the ripples, then we have a different experience in our life. And we have an opportunity to do a lot of good or a lot of bad, really, when we think about it. Because the word impact means to push up against or to leave a mark. And the funny thing about pushing up against or leaving a mark is we may get our way for a moment, but the mark generally goes away. The ripples stop and the mark goes away. The word influence means to flow through. It means to leave a legacy. It means to give people something to remember you by that wasn't an impact, that didn't leave a mark, but created a feeling, created a sense of belonging or a sense of love, or a sense of accomplishment, or maybe even just a sense of encouragement that said I could go do something and be something better than I was the day before. And that's what influence is. Influence is always about empowering people. And so we're all familiar with this idea of a rock hitting into the water, and it's pretty powerful to think about that. Too often we leave it just right there. We don't think about the rock that we are as we walk into our home or as we walk into our office. And we influence or impact people. My office used to laugh. There was somebody at the front, then I'd walk in, they would send a message to the back, "Oh, he's not in the mood today, don't approach him." Because they could tell by the way my face was. And that day they knew if they got in my way, I would make a mark. And when they made this aware to me, when I first was aware of that, I started to think, that's not how I want to be. That's not how I ever want to be. So I started thinking about what were the actions that I needed to take in the office or at home to be an influence instead of an impact. Probably the easiest thing to do is to make an impact. But to be an influence takes a lot of effort. We have to think about things a little bit more clearly and a little bit more deeply, because we're moving through the water, not staying on the surface of it. And so when we start thinking about our life from the frame of reference that, who am I influencing? And really, what does it mean to influence somebody else? And how do I want to influence people? Then life starts to change for us. And so when I think of myself as the rock, and I think about the marks that I've made in my life, and I think about the influences that I've created, the well-being that I've instilled in other people just because they got a chance to be around me, I'm excited about that. And it gives me greater meaning in my life, because now I'm not thinking about what am I going to get, I'm thinking about what am I going to give. And to me, that's a lot more valuable.